Ebony, thank you so much for being here on Flute Unscripted. It is a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your really busy schedule of teaching and rehearsals to chat with me. Can you give us a little glimpse into like what the average day for Ebony Thomas, what that looks like?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say my life is never boring because it's always different. So I teach at University of Missouri, Kansas City, but I play in the Dallas Opera, so it's kind of a lot of back and forth. So some days I'm teaching all day, and then during my lunch breaks, I'm like squeezing in practice. Other times I'm kind of like flying somewhere, running to a rehearsal, and then like flying somewhere else. So it really is different day by day, but I kind of like it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even just trying to coordinate together for you and I to find a time where we could sit down and just talk. It was funny because like every time I'd be free, you're off and you're jet setting and you're doing something else. So it seems like you're always on the road and you're always off doing something, but you must love that lifestyle.
I love it. I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything, really.
And I am dying to pick your brain, all things pick. So, pardon the pun. So you mentioned the flute and piccolo of the Dallas Opera. Can you share more about the realities of long opera performances and sharing some tips for longevity and endurance in rehearsals and in the final performance? How do you stay sharp and on point, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, it's a constant struggle, I'm not gonna lie. But I have a method, you know, um, as flutists, we have to practice every day, we have to warm up, and sometimes I'll have 6 hours of rehearsal or 6 hour opera and teaching before or in between that. So I sort of have a routine for my long days where I get in my fundamentals every day. I like made a pact with myself that if there are days that I literally cannot practice, because that does happen sometimes, like I'm in the air all day, I
Right.
will at least squiz in my fundamentals. So when I have long opera performances or rehearsals, I have sort of a condensed version that still makes me feel like I can get the job done. A lot of my job is playing a lot of really soft but high piccolo.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I include that in my fundamentals. And it's really just having like a really sharp ear. Because at any given time, might not be me that's having a bad day, but one of my colleagues, and I need to be able to adjust immediately so nobody can hear it in the audience. So that's something that I'm always kind of really alert and aware of. And, having a piccolo job, there's also just a lot of tacit,
That's true.
so I'm just sitting there. But, one fun thing that has happened this season with the Dallas Opera is they actually switched our seating. So I can actually see on the stage, which is both amazing and
Fun.
probably slightly dangerous.
All right, a little
I got my
distraction.
colleagues like, it's your turn. Like, pay attention. And I'm like staring on the stage. But I get to sit back and just enjoy the beautiful music too,
Yeah, that's awesome, of course.
Yeah.
And do you have any specific like warm-ups or exercises that are part of those fundamentals? Like what is the one thing that you have to make sure you do on that daily basis that you were talking about?
Yeah. Harmonics and whistle tones for me
Okay.
are just, I do them every day just because it fine tunes those little teeny tiny muscles so that I can like sustain this like high pianissimo A flat after tacit for 45 minutes, but it really just kind of like helps like keep those muscles in check. And also, really, when I'm doing my warm ups, I'm always aware if there's any tension. Sometimes we can't help it, like if I've been like at the airport, like holding my backpack like this all day, that my neck's gonna be a little bit stiff. And I need to be aware of that so that I can consciously support, use my air, and not like rely on like, squeezing my muscles to get those notes out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, relaxing and just like fine tuning my face are like the big things that I'm always aware of every single day.
Does it seem like it's extra hard or almost like it's contradictory when you're having intonation issues in real life? You're in the pit, it's the performance. The instinct is to kind of clench up or stress out as opposed to relaxing. And would you say relaxing and just using your ear is probably a big part of staying in tune?
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, even though I know that is not the solution, sometimes I do clench up. So I will literally write in my music, relax, like in these huge letters. And just because the more you tighten up, the worse the intonation gets, as we all know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just try and stay relaxed and just know what I need to do on specific notes. And, 99% of the time it works out.
Is there any like one fingering that we all have to know about that is like some secret that you're holding on to? Like one note that has a special fingering that's kind of changed your life?
Hmm. I would say probably my favorite. I get really nervous using alternate fingerings, just because I feel like sometimes in the heat of the moment I'm gonna be like and then like
Right.
use the wrong thing. But
Yeah.
I do use the alternate F sharp fingering, so and it has saved me so many times. It's like you can get a nice soft attack, you can slur up to it. So F sharp alternate fingerings are my favorite.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know what you're talking about where you think you have it. And then in the moment, you're like, wait, what do I put down? And you
Yeah.
freak out. Yeah.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I mean, I might forget my own name.
Right.
So, like, let alone a fingering.
Right. And I love how you've shared on your blog too, which I loved kind of delving into and seeing more of, and we need to see more posts on there. That sometimes you struggle to find the motivation to practice too. I bet that was probably came up a lot during COVID as well. You're really honest about that. So, do you have any advice for staying motivated?
Absolutely. It's something that everybody struggles with at some point in time. And I think it's really important to play music that you enjoy. It can be some like cheesy, like Disney tune. Love Disney. And so on days when I'm just like not feeling it, if I have been teaching for 12 hours or I get home and it's 11 p.m., but I know I need to like learn act one or learn this piece for a sonata that I'm trying to play on a recital, then I'll start it off by just kind of playing something that I like. And then I'm like, okay, well, now that I'm in it, then I can carry on and do the stuff that I do. But in my blog, I do talk about the Pomodoro technique, which I use quite a bit, not only for when I'm like not feeling motivated, but also just to prevent injury. Sometimes I'm like, I have to sit down, I have these 3 hours, and I'm just like going at it. But it's really important to take breaks. Take breaks, get up, walk around, get the blood circulating, like rejuvenate your mind. So even when I have like long practice hours where I am motivated and I'm feeling like I can get a whole lot done, I make sure to sort of implement that technique and take breaks.
Yeah, well, that's really good advice. Do you share some of that advice with your students? You won that job there at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, in fall of 2021, right? So,
That's right.
can you share a little bit more about your studio and what really is exciting you now about shaping and influencing the next young generation of flutists?
Yeah, I love this job so much. I feel like I've been really fortunate. I have had really, really amazing teachers, and I just kind of feel like it's my responsibility to pass on all this great knowledge to the next generation. So I definitely share my struggles. I share my practice techniques. A big thing that I tell my students is like, keep a practice journal. Like sometimes you might have to skip out on Mozart because you got to work on your wind ensemble music. So you can flip open and be like, okay, 2 days ago, I left off right here. And it saves you so much time. So I really try to teach them how to practice efficiently, to be mindful, to be aware of any tension in their bodies to prevent injury.
Yeah.
And it's really great. Like I just love the fact that my studio, like, get along really well. I mean, maybe a little too well, like RSV and COVID and everything's going
Oh
around, and we all
gosh.
hang out together. So
All
whenever
right.
one of them gets sick, I'm like, oh no, it's like the
All of
whole
them are going to
studio.
be down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were one of the last Fenwick Smith students as well. What do you feel like you took away from your time with him, and what from his personal, tips and legacy do you pass down to your students?
Oh yeah, the great Fenwick Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, I adore him. It's just gone too soon. You know what I mean? He's a genius. One thing I love about, I call him Mr. Smith, and I always will for the rest of my life.
Oh,
What I loved about Mr. Smith was that he really taught on an individual basis. So he didn't do this cookie cutter teaching, and I do that too. And really, all of my teachers have done that. So I might have some students who really need to hone in on etudes, and others where I'm like, you need to bring in your scales. Like I need to hear every single thing you're doing so we can fix things. So that's a big thing. One thing that I really admire, and I'm getting there, but it's like a goal, it's a life goal to be like, is he would give an annual recital at NEC every year, and he did it for like, I don't know, however many years, and he never repeated a piece of rep.
Wow.
And I'm like, we have so much great rep out there. Why are we always playing the same five pieces over and over again?
Yeah.
So I try to do it more by like season or semester, because I'm giving so many recitals, I can't change the rep every single time. But I'm like, yeah, and like we need to hear all this great rep that's out there. And lastly, one thing that I love about Mr. Smith, obviously, is his playing, but he could get all these tone colors and knew when to kind of be in the background and blend. And he really, really taught me how to blend when I was there. And I actually ultimately ended up winning a job like on the tail end of my time at NEC. And I really attribute a lot of that to studying with him.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit more too about programming, other factors that you think of when you are deciding what to program on a recital?
Yeah, I like to push the envelope a little bit. In general, when I program, I mean, my friends make fun of me all the time about this. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm giving a recital in New York City. They're like, don't get crazy with the rap, Ebony. Like, tone it down a little bit. Because I like that crazy stuff. But I'll put like one sort of meat and potatoes piece, one piece that's really familiar. And then I kind of like to push the envelope and put pieces that are less likely programmed or maybe never programmed. Because eventually I would hope that all of these pieces would become a little bit more mainstream.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's as an audience member, I love that too. And can you talk a little bit more about your time as a fellow at New World Symphony as well, and what it was like to work with another mentor, MTT? So, how did that experience shape your career? And was it in the way that you hoped it would or you thought it would?
Absolutely. I Being a fellow at the New World Symphony really was a turning point in my career. Before I had gone to New World, I'd won a 1 year position in the Houston Symphony. So the big question people always ask me is they're like, well, what was it like going from, like this big full-time professional orchestra to being somewhat more of a student? And honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. I was really young when I played in the Houston Symphony, and obviously, if I had been able to stay there, I think my life would be just as happy as it is now and fulfilled. But at New World, everybody's the same age and everybody's like really ambitious, and they really challenge you to take risks there. And, before I had gone to New World, I was like, I am a second flute player, which I still think I do. But now I sort of like, I really love playing all the positions. Like, give me a job, I can
Yeah,
do it.
do it.
But when I got there, MTT really groomed me to be this soloist, like principal player. And so, he's a musical genius. So anytime he would be up there on the podium, you just want to soak in everything that he said.
Yeah,
And being around people, like-minded people, if I was preparing for an audition, I could go knock on someone's practice room. It doesn't matter if they're a percussionist or a tuba player or a clarinet player. I'm like, hey, can you come listen to my Mendelssohn Scherzo really quick? And it was just a really supportive environment, and I'm still reaping the benefits of it to this day.
sure. It's like the culture and the environment itself is its own educational experience too, and it's separate
Exactly.
from all the rep and the people. So we're talking about role models, mentors, but you yourself are also a role model to a lot of your colleagues and peers. I spoke a little bit with Ethan from Burkart. We talked about you. I heard a story about you playing the Lieberman Sonata for Jeannie Baxter in a master class, and he said that after you played, she turned to the audience and said, sometimes a teacher can say too much, and she just left it at that. That you played beautifully, and she had nothing to comment on. So, do you see yourself that way? Just a minute ago, you were saying, you kind of got out of your shell and can sit in any seat, and now see yourself as that soloist. But do you see yourself as a leader among your colleagues and paving the way?
You know, I don't. but I'm aware that I have been put in that position.
Yeah.
So I think the thing for me is just to always be true to myself, be kind to people, and represent myself well, because I know there are people who kind of view me as a role model. Ethan loves telling that story.
Well, and you have a great relationship too with Burkart, and you're a Burkart piccolo artist.
Yes.
Yeah. How did that relationship kind of get forged?
So a few years ago, I have like this sort of long story with all the equipment that I'm playing on or was playing on. I've had great equipment, but none of it I necessarily like chose. It was sort of like handed to me. And I was playing on a piccolo and it was fine, but I'm like, things could be better. And Burkhart was like, well, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just like the instrument. So how about we ship you some instruments and try them? And so I pick up this Burkhardt Elite, actually the one that I'm playing on. And I'm like, oh, it wasn't me. It's just time for a change. Like, we all need a change. We all like grow out of our instruments at some point. And so I chose the Burkhardt Elite, loved it, and then I won my job in the opera, and then Burkhardt approached me and was like, "We'd love for you to be a piccolo artist." And of course, at first I was like, "Who, me? Like, but it's an honor, and I absolutely love working with them. And now, as of last spring, I actually play on a Burkhardt flute as well, so I'm like
Oh, great.
fully Burkhardt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're committed. Yeah.
I am.
Last question for you, Ebony. What is on your music stand right now?
Woo, that's a great question. Lots of things. I have to keep a little like schedule that I look at every day. So I am playing the Kevin Puts flute concerto in the spring. And so I'm kind of been dabbling in that so that, it doesn't creep up on me.
Yeah.
And I'm giving a recital in New York in a couple
We're
weeks.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So I'm practicing Move On by Carlos Simon. It's kind of like pushing the envelope a
Yeah.
little bit, getting some different music out there. And then I'm doing the Vidor Suite. That's my meat and
Wonderful.
potatoes.
Yeah.
Find Me Iman by Valerie Coleman.
Great.
And one more piece. Hall of Ghosts on Piccolo by Amanda Harburg, which is another sort of thing that I'm trying to become an advocate for, is like, why don't we play more auxiliary instruments on our recitals?
Yeah.
So I'm
Why
gonna
not?
throw a little piccolo in there. So I'm doing that, and then I've got a bunch of like symphony things that I'm working on. So I've got that on my stand and just trying to stay afloat with all the practicing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to all of your hard work. But thank you for taking the time out and talking with me. It was really great getting to know you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll see you in New York very soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.